So on to segment number 10, and this one comes also in line with the previous segment, in the sense of, even though we are not talking about mandatory costs, these costs will become increasingly more inevitable to be incurred because of the way things have been structured over as time went by up until the present moment. And in this one, we are talking about the fact that in the learning ecosystem, practice resources offered on a free basis become fewer, and to compensate for that, the CFA Institute created a new practice pack for candidates, which is a paid add-on to candidates. And so, as you can see here, over time, and when we talk about practice questions, these have not changed that much. They still remain in the thousands, which is something positive. I left this field blank over here because when I took the level 3 exam, I recall that at the time there were less practice questions than were available for level 2 and for level 1. Now, I can understand that because, as I will mention in a later slide, practice questions for level 3 require more time, require more resources because of the essay portion of the exam. And so basically requires more, it's more difficult to create additional questions to practice. And so I can understand that they provide less questions to candidates to practice. However, this is the biggest factor and the biggest, basically the biggest factor in this segment, which is the issue of the mock exams. And these are based on my own experience. I recall that for level 1, back in 2019, we had 3 mock exams for free, downloadable in PDF. And I recall that for level 2 and level 3, we only had 2 mock exams. And the second one was not immediately available. It was only made available about around 7-8 weeks before the actual exam. So they were not immediately available. Now, as I saw, of course, online, on CFA Institute website, and also other websites such as the 300hours.com. Apparently, now it is only provided one mock exam, which is non-downloadable, and so you can only access through the learning ecosystem. And before, mock exams could be bought in addition to the ones that were already provided for free. But now the mock exams as a whole are no longer available for purchase. And that is because of the new practice pack that was created by the CFA Institute. And so this is the most significant situation here, because as you can imagine, especially if you are already a candidate, you will see that mock exams are the most critical element to prepare for an exams. And so the less you have, the more difficult will be for you to prepare. And it's usually said, for example, many contributors with articles for the 300hours.com says that on average, successful candidates do 4 to 6, at least 4 to 6 mock exams in preparation for each exam. And so, as you can see, it's a very, very significant development, the fact that you have less mock exams available. Even so, instead, the CFA Institute rolled out this new practice pack. And here, as you can see, one of the things that I think it's most noticeable is that for level 1 you have 5 additional mock exams in this pack and another 1,000 practice questions. For level 2 you get less, you get only 3 mock exams, most likely, and also 75% of the practice questions in level 1. Mainly, I assume it's because of the structure of the questions, because these are no longer freestanding questions, these are item sets. And so it takes, of course, more work to develop those. And for level 3, and I did not mention it here, but for level 3, you get only 2 mock exams and only 200 practice questions for the core content and 100 practice questions for the specialized pathway that you choose. And so in total, you get 300 questions to practice. In all of these packs, regardless of the level, you get an additional mock exam, but this one is you will be using the software used for on the testing center to simulate the actual exam conditions. And of course this is of course a big boost, because it allows you to prepare for the exam, and you can redo the exam, of course, with the same questions, but at least you have a forced time restriction in which you have to complete the exam within the allotted time. In which, in this case, just a side point, I would really recommend to do this exam last, after you've done everything else, just to see where you stand in your preparation. And this one, you also get the downloadable CFA curriculum in PDF or ebook format. I mean, you already received the curriculum. I don't see why this is still in here. I assume that as long as you pay the exam fee, you get the curriculum as well uh, or this the only conclusion that I make is that now, if you pay the exam fee, you get the CFA curriculum, but you need to access through the learning ecosystem. Is no longer available as it was before through PDF. Now you also get the curriculum in PDF. That is my assumption. And in here, this practice pack costs $2.99 and is fully integrated with the candidate's learning ecosystem, and so this makes it easy to navigate through. But as you can see, this is an additional cost, and it's not a small one. This is also significant, given the fact that an exam nowadays is around 1,200, 1,300. This basically is 20% more of the exam for you to pay in case you want to get this practice pack to practice. And so, with this in mind, and I want to be as unbiased as possible here, because I think that's a really critical stance to take. This practice pack, of course, is good quality, because it allows candidates to better prepare for the exams. Of course, no doubt about that. More than anything else, it's the mock exams and the practice questions that do the heavy lifting in your preparation, and without them, it doesn't matter how many times you read the curriculum, you take notes, it will never be the same as when you actually apply those concepts into actual questions. Without this element, you will not be able to pass the exam, period. But despite this, of course, and this is a positive aspect, we also know that, and we can understand that the CFA Institute also, by doing this, creates another source of revenue aside from exam registrations, and also gets his feet wet by stepping into the market of the approved prep providers, which of course we know that they are very expensive. The packages they provide many times go into $600, $800, even $1,000. And so at a lower price, they provide also some practice resources, even though, of course, they are much less comprehensive. The practice pack is much less comprehensive because it lacks the videos, the notes, the question banks that the usual prep providers give access to candidates, to paying candidates. And so we can understand that also this is very important for the CFA as a means to make up for the fewer exam registrations, especially after the COVID-19 pandemic, because they already have increased the prices for the registrations to make up for this shortfall. And now this is another source of revenue, and this also adds on to the boosting of the revenues that we have seen already that they had. And so, yeah, basically they are trying to propel, of course, their revenues this way, and this is another avenue to do it. However, and this is the focus point of this segment, and of course, this is just my opinion. This is nothing to do with the actual. I don't know if this is the actual purpose of the CFA Institute. It doesn't really. It is not significant here. This is just my opinion. By shifting formerly free exam prep resources to a paid package, brings problems, especially for candidates and also indirectly for the CFA Institute. This is a big point, and it stretches over more than one slide, but suffice to say that most more affluent candidates, the ones that can afford to pay more, they were always able to access more exam prep resources than the other ones, than the less affluent ones. And so the former ones, the more affluent ones, can and usually do pay for resources from other prep providers in order to be able to prepare for the exam in much less time. And so I'm okay with that, because at the end of the day, if you want to pay more, you get the benefit of being able to prepare in less time because of the resources that you get by paying more. It's okay, but by reducing the amount of free resources available, and especially after increasing the program's exam fees, the less affluent candidates are much worse off, because at the end of the day, it's 20% more. By my calculations, rough calculations, it's 20% more of the exam fees. And at the end of the day, we are putting these candidates much worse off, because they are much less willing to prepare adequately because of their lack of resources. And let's be honest, the more affluent ones are not necessarily any better off, because they already have access to prep providers by paying what they are willing to pay. And those packages of other prep providers are much more comprehensive. So if someone has 3,000 euros to spend on each level, let's just say that, $3,000 to spend, they would not even bother with this practice pack. They would go directly to another prep provider. They buy a much comprehensive package, they get much more resources, and then they will be able to get much more preparation out of that package than this practice pack, because this practice pack is more limited relative to those. And so, because of this situation, I think this is very clear that there will be a larger gap in the quality of the preparation among candidates, which under normal circumstances would be something to be expected, but the explanation factor of this gap should be the differences in discipline and commitment by each candidate, not their differences in financial wherewithal. We are creating a situation in which you are better to prepare more in much more effectively for the exam, because you have deeper pockets, and this should never happen. The barrier should not be financial resources. The barrier should be commitment, discipline, desire to be excellent, and nothing else. Not financial wherewithal. This is, for me, this is something that is absolutely wrong. And to continue this particular point, as I mentioned in here, the CFA program has a reputation and also claims that it's a gold standard of the investment industry, the gold standard designation for the investment industry. So it's all about highlighting and highly regarding excellence. It would be expected that the CFA Institute would provide the conditions for its candidate to prepare themselves exclusively to the extent of their discipline and commitment, not to the extent of how much money are you willing to pay for your preparation. Because if we put everyone on the same level of discipline and commitment, I think we are able. I think it's clear and it's expected that candidates from more developed countries, which on average have more money, and keep in mind these packages and this program is quoted in US dollars. These candidates that have that are in more developed countries, have stronger currencies, are much more able to pay for these resources that candidates in less developed countries, which have worse jobs or worse paying jobs, and they have a currency which is weaker, and so it makes even more difficult for them to overcome the barrier of financial wherewithal in order to prepare adequately for the exam. Now, another point, and because of this shift from resources being freely available previously and now becoming paid, this fosters a perception that the CFA program is becoming increasingly more modular. And so, and this is a common tactic, as I mentioned in here, deployed by service providers to extract a bigger portion of the consumer surplus, all right? And for those who are not familiar with economics, this is something that is also explained in the program, by the way. But in any microeconomic textbook, you will be able to find this concept. And so the consumer surplus is the amount that the consumer is willing to spend. And so the difference between what is the actual price of the good and the maximum amount the consumer is willing to spend is the consumer surplus. Let's just say, for example, I'm willing to pay at most 2,000 euros per each program. Before, the exam fees were about 600, 800, and that's it. So my consumer surplus will be kept by me, and it would be about 1,200, because 2,000 minus 800 is 1,200. Now, because of this situation, the exam price hikes and this new practice pack also being another cost, candidates will be spending around 1,700 or 1,800 for an exam, including the practice pack. And so the consumer surplus will be taken by the CFA Institute, and in this case, my consumer surplus on my side that I keep will be about 200 or 300 euros and $300. And so this situation is something that's, for me, it's not correct again, because it seems that they are really, really trying hard to make the program as, of course, not only more expensive, but they make it as in a way that it maximizes and or equals as much as possible the amount that candidates are able to spend and willing and able to spend. And so this is a measure of a sort of a price discrimination that basically aims to maximize the money that they extract from each candidate. And so another point here is, of course, creating. This is also due to the fact that, as I mentioned in here, the deeper you get into the program, the less resources you get out of the practice pack. Again, I understand that creating materials for levels 2 and level 3, it's more difficult, requires more time, more resources than for level 1, of course, no doubt about that. But even so, this all is wrong since the beginning, since you take away resources that were formerly provided for free. And so by providing more resources to level 1 candidates, this may be interpreted by outsiders, especially potential candidates. This may be seen as a tactic to bring new people into the program. But as the candidates progress through the program, they may, at the end, turn to other prep providers because they see, all right, if I pay 300 for, I'm a level 3 candidate, if I pay 300 for just 2 mock exams and 300 practice questions, I mean, this may not be minimally worthwhile for me. And so I may be, if I'm able to pay, I'm going to pay a bit more and get an adequate package out of a prep provider. And for those who cannot afford it, they are left out with very, very few resources in the learning ecosystem to prepare for them. And so basically, this means that the deeper candidates go into the program, the bigger will be the difference in terms of quality of preparation due to the differences in the amount of money they can spend. Because if candidates can spend only the practice pack value, and they are level 1 candidates, they still get a good amount of practice out of the practice pack. But if we are talking about level 3 candidates, these €300 or $300 only afford you little resources. So if you are able to pay more, you'll get another package out of another prep provider. But if you can only spend 300, all right, you pay this practice pack, but you get much fewer preparation than a candidate who is paying for another prep provider. And so the deeper you go into the program, the bigger the difference in quality preparation it will be created by the difference in the depth of the pockets that each candidate has. And so, especially when it comes to especially if you consider the level of difficulty of level 2 and especially level 3, I think this is something that creates a very unfair situation for less affluent candidates at the end of the day. I know that, again, level 3 resources and practice questions and mock exams require much more time, much more resources to create. But if those were already provided for free before and you already increase the fees of the exam, and especially now there is the exams are no longer the same price regardless of the level. Level 3 the exam fee for the level 3 exam now is more expensive than for the other levels. So you already differentiate the price because of the amount of work that it takes to create the exams, to review the responses of the candidates and all that. this situation, I think it brings more unfairness into the program and the experience that candidates will face as they go through it. And so, in many ways, these are basically the same conclusion that in the previous segment. They run the risk of pricing out capable and disciplined candidates out of the program, all right? And especially because they see that, all right, this is only 20% more in terms of practice pack, but I'm not able to prepare adequately given the amount of resources I have available. So, yeah, this may people to become frustrated, disillusioned, dropping out of the program, being dissatisfied, and lastly, and I think this point should be left last, but it's not. Um, yeah, the brand and reputation of the program uh, will be eroded because candidates and outsiders will start to think that, all right, this is not only about discipline and excellence, but it's about how much money are you willing to spend. And this is the absolutely the wrong factor that in which you differentiate and candidates are able to stand out or not. And yeah, this is for me. No, it's not fair in the slightest way.